such a time as this.
And welcome to For Such a Time as This Roundtable. This is one of the most heartbreaking, in my opinion, heartbreaking roundtables we have done in a long time. With that, let's just jump right into it. With that, Vicki, the producer tonight. Vicki, before you jump in, Vicki, hey, give me a thumbs up on YouTube and Rumble. Let us know that we're coming through loud and clear. Please, please, please. With that said, Vicki, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Pastor James. Thanks, everybody joining us tonight. Yeah, this is a sad subject. We're going to be talking about the deliberate dumbing down of the American education system. This is an issue, that we know affects every American, whether you have children in the public schools now or not, in the future or not. This affects everybody because it affects our economy. It affects so many things when our kids in our country are not being educated properly. So let's just start with some cold, hard facts to set the scene. Now, 8 years ago, in 2015, the National Literacy Institute reported that 32 million Americans couldn't read above a 5th grade level, and 19% of high school graduates couldn't read at all. That was in 2015. You think that's gotten better or worse, panel?
Worse.
Yep.
I don't think it's getting prettier.
No. So now the 19% went to 21%. 21% of adults in the U.S. are illiterate as of 2022. And 54% of adults have a literacy below 6th grade level. The low literacy rates end up costing Americans up to $2.2 trillion every year. And that's because 2/3 of students who cannot read proficiently by the end of the 4th grade will end up in jail or on welfare. New Mexico has the lowest literacy rate for children, with over 30% of the state's children being illiterate.
Wow.
In the D.C. public school system.
Wait, did you say lowest?
Yeah, New Mexico has the lowest literacy
That's the
rate.
lowest, 30%?
Mm-hmm. Yep. According to this, yeah.
Which means other states have higher illiteracy rates?
No, the lowest literacy rate.
Yes, the
Not
lowest
lowest
literacy.
illiteracy
okay,
rate.
Yes,
okay,
yes,
okay,
yes.
okay,
Only
okay,
30% are
okay.
literate.
I knew. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Wait. No, I read that wrong.
It's funny that we're getting confused on the word literate and illiterate.
Over 30% of the state's children are illiterate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Okay. That's
In the
terrible.
D.C. public
Yeah.
school system, where our guest, my son Ben here, he just left D.C.
Fled.
Only 9% of black 3rd through 12th graders were counted as being proficient in math, and just 19% of students are proficient overall. In Baltimore, in the 23 city schools in Baltimore, 93% of 3rd through 8th graders cannot do math at grade level. The ACT scores are at a 32-year low, according to the Washington Examiner in an article that came out last week. The average ACT score has continuously declined for the past 6 years. The average score for the class of 2023 was 19.5 out of 36.
Are they still doing? Because that was racist. Wasn't that deemed racist a few years ago?
The ACT test?
Yeah.
Probably.
Probably. Everything is. The ACT also revealed that scores on individual subjects in the test, such as math and reading, were below ACT's benchmark for college readiness.
And that's probably not a very high benchmark.
So I found this article from the American Thinker called Dumbing Down K through 12 Education. It says the U.S. ranks near the bottom in a survey of students' math skills, 30 industrialized countries, and many Americans are in denial. The same survey showed that 1/3 believed their own schools were excellent, but only 1/6 believed the same of other schools. And we've certainly seen that with our school task force when we talk to parents. They're like, oh, yeah, things are bad, but not in my kid's school. It's fine. So there are a lot of people in denial. And I think part of that is because the parents in the same school, they're comparing notes with other parents in that school, and if their kids are behind and your friends' kids are behind, well, then everything's fine because they're just in that little bubble and not seeing reality.
And if you admit it, you have to do something about it.
Well, that's for sure. That is for sure. While other countries, again, reading from this article, while other countries take their K through 12 education seriously, American leaders are satisfied with pumping more money into an outdated system that continues to fail students and produce mediocre results. Of course, you wouldn't learn this listening to the rhetoric coming out of our political and educational leaders. Instead, they tout data that ranks U.S. students against other American students. States boast about their performance relative to other states, and school districts flaunt 2% gains in graduation rates. And you guys have in your notes this picture I saw on LinkedIn about our dear local elementary district 15, where they are proud to recognize Winston Campus Junior High. Now, we know from our recent work with the school task force handing out flyers at Winston Campus Junior High at parent orientation that 84% of the students at Winston cannot do math at grade level and 79% cannot read at grade level. Yet here they are on LinkedIn saying that they've been selected as one of 11 schools to receive the prestigious 2023 School of Distinction Award. From who? From the Association for Middle Level Education. Wow.
They should be proud of themselves. It's a real achievement.
It is unreal that these folks can stand there with this, pose for this picture. Anyway.
They're smiling.
They're smiling. The majority of U.S. public school students do not achieve grade level proficiency. The nation's report card reveals that only 28.7% of fourth graders, 26% of eighth graders, and 23% of 12th graders reach basic proficiency levels averaged across 7 subjects: civics, geography, math, reading, science, history, and writing, on the National Assessment of Educational Progress test. In other words, over 71% of our students lack basic academic proficiencies at the end of their 13 years of K through 12 schooling.
Explains a lot.
Just another.
Even I was surprised by these, and I
shocked.
Explains a lot. Relativism. You never heard of the? I'm from the South. You never heard of the? I think I shared it before. You never heard of Arkansas's state motto?
Mm-mm.
Thank God for Mississippi. That's terrible. That's terrible. That's terrible. They're 49th in everything.
That's
Mississippi is 50.
If we don't laugh, we'd cry.
That's a northern joke. But anyway, go ahead.
So our first video we're going to watch here is from a group I found called Educating America that has 270,000 likes on Facebook.
Wow.
And here are 2 7th grade teachers
Wow.
talking about how far behind their kids
This
are.
is heartbreaking.
I'm gonna just say this. I teach 7th grade. They are still performing on the 4th grade level.
7th grade English teacher here. I teach in northern Houston, and I teach at one of the more affluent schools. When I tell you that these babies cannot read, they cannot write, and they cannot comprehend, I'm not being funny. I'm being dead serious. It doesn't exist. I have kids constantly asking me, how do I spell window? How do I spell important? How do I spell though? And they be serious. They're dead serious. I could ask them, who is the main character of your story? The story of 4-paragraph story we just read. Can't tell you. They don't know. They don't know. They don't know. It took us 4 weeks to get through how to answer a question in a complete sentence.
So they're not 1 year behind. They're not 2 years behind. These teachers are saying they are 3 years behind.
That's a string of criminals. They're in the 7th grade. That means your 6th grade teacher's a criminal. That means your 5th grade teacher's a criminal. That means your 4th grade teacher. You keep passing kids who can't
Well, that's what they
read.
do. Yeah, that's what they keep passing.
It's a
It makes
system.
no sense. Why are they doing that?
Well,
And they just give each other awards.
Give you awards.
Clapping is the downfall of our nation. It ensues.
Again, maybe we'll get to this later on, but I think they're doing exactly what their intentions are to do.
Yes.
Thus, the deliberate dumbing down of public schools.
Yep.
It's just another sign of where America is on the world stage. Like you said, we're in the bottom of industrialized countries, probably nearing third world levels with intelligence, and our school leaders are just happy that there's a higher percentage of LGBT students than literate students. That's what their priorities are.
Yeah.
And this is going to have effects decades down the road.
Yeah. And I'm sure, we know COVID exacerbated this problem. Things were already bad, and COVID just made things so much worse because these kids were sent home, right? And they lost so much instruction time, and it just made everything worse. And, yeah, we'll get to more of that later, actually. We'll talk more about COVID and what happened during that time. So question is this deliberate? Is there some kind of cover-up going on? Well, Nick Giordano is a professor of political science at Suffolk County Community College in New York. He says he's been on the front lines for 2 decades witnessing the devastation of the American education system. I don't usually like Dr. Phil clips, but I thought this clip from Dr. Phil was really good with Nick here.
Nick, I'm perplexed by this. There is really a sellout going on, it seems to me. Instead of figuring out innovative ways to teach our kids and close the gap, it's like the system is caving to the least and meeting these kids where they are rather than bringing them up to standard. Is that a fair assessment?
That is a fair assessment. It actually goes beyond that because you're seeing almost like a cover-up within the education system itself. I mean, basic proficiency levels on average are about 25% of the subject material when they graduate high school. Now, what they don't say is those numbers have been flat for about 30 years, yet we've been dropping standards at the same time. So if we kept the same standards in place for 30 years, the numbers would be far lower and students wouldn't even be making the basic proficiency levels. It would be lower than that. And it really is devastating because these are supposed to be the future leaders, yet we don't treat them that way. We don't educate them that way.
Well, you say K through 12 has just collapsed.
Correct.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I give my students a basic citizenship exam on the first day. I've been teaching political science for years, and nearly every student fails that exam. These students don't even know the very basics of American government, and yet government impacts all aspects of our lives. But it's across the board. It's in every subject we're seeing this failure.
Wow. It's really frightening what's going on out there. And
they keep talking about the future, the future. It ain't the future. Have you ever heard of John Fetterman? Have you ever seen him? Have you ever heard of AOC and her great wisdom?
Right, we're rewarding.
They're there.
Look at what we're rewarding. Yeah, we're rewarding bad and
Have you ever seen Joe Biden, our president?
Yeah, these are what some kids are looking to as role models, and maybe that's why we have our next video where it seems like the kids just don't care. So yeah, that's a really good point. If they don't have good role models and they see lack of intelligence being rewarded, what does that do? So we're just going to get specific real quick here in our great state where we all reside, well, except for one of us, in Illinois. According to WirePoints, which is a great organization, they do a lot of good data work here in Illinois. There are 30 schools in Illinois that have 0 students who can read at grade level.
What?
0. 22 of those schools are part of, you know it, Chicago Public Schools. The other 8 are right outside Chicago.
0.
The failure list in math is even longer. There are 53 schools statewide where not one kid is proficient in math.
Not one in the whole school.
Right.
Close it.
In 50. Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly. According to Illinois Policy and Other Good Organization, a student's academic success as defined by high school graduation can be predicted with reasonable accuracy by knowing someone's reading skill at the end of third grade. Because third grade, up till then, you're learning to read. And then after that, you've got to be able to read in order to learn.
Compounding.
Yeah, exactly. According to the National Research Council, statewide in 2022, only 27.4% of all students could read at grade level by the end of third grade in the state of Illinois. 27.4% could read at grade level by the end of third. A startling 89% of the school districts in Illinois recorded proficiency rates among third graders, had a higher percentage of third grade students failing to read at grade level than reading at grade level. 89% had more failing to read than reading at grade level. And just 14% of low-income third grade students statewide were reading at proficiency. So there's this great phenomenon, which what we alluded to earlier, called social promotion, pushing kids into the next grade regardless of ability, leaves unsuspecting Illinois parents believing their kids are being educated simply because they're advancing. But it actually leads to higher dropout rates and lower rates of graduation. Cripples students' future chances for success. Social promotion in Illinois even continues into high school. But in contrast, states like the great state of Florida, they outlaw social promotion. They require students to stay in third grade until they absolutely have the skills they need to move on.
What a novel idea.
How about it? How about it? So
I think with your earlier question about the deliberate aspect of this, looking at these statistics, it appears obvious that this is deliberate. And you have to think a good nation, you would see these things. And it's to your point, Pastor James, about like the future tomorrow. And these are always these cliches we see in political circles when we're talking about educational issues. They'll say, oh, the people of tomorrow. It's like, well, if you're a leader who is running a nation that you want to prosper and you're looking at the statistics that we pulled off of Google, tomorrow doesn't look too pretty. And
what
you would do something about it immediately
right.
if you wanted to have a prosperous tomorrow, like you claim to in your cliche speeches. So obviously it's deliberate because this would be the first thing you pick, and then you have to ask, well, why would you want a nation full of illiterate, uneducated people? And it's about control. If they aren't able to understand, if they don't know what's going on, if it's overwhelming for them, and you can put them in front of the TV and they say ABC and you say ABC because you don't know how to think critically, perhaps not even how to read,
right?
Then you can control them for the rest of their lives.
Right. And yeah, if these legislators in our great state of Illinois actually cared, they would do something about this. All the school boards would do something. They would actually bring it up.
Yeah, the school board one's baffling. You're literally in charge of the schools. Yeah. It's not like you have another, these other officials could be like, I'm dealing with homelessness or Israel, but it's like you're the school board.
Yeah. It's like the mechanic in that funny commercial. Your job is to fix the brakes. And they said, will my brakes work? Well, you know what I was saying is, if the brakes don't stop you, something else will. Well, that's your sole job, is to fix the brakes.
No kidding.
And if your sole job is the scoop, they should resign. I would be embarrassed.
They should be embarrassed. They don't have enough.
Embarrassed.
If 80% of cars are coming out without brakes, you'd probably fire. You'd probably fire the brake guy.
Oh my God, this is embarrassing.
And they don't care. That's the worst part.
They don't care.
Yeah, they don't care.
Take it to another sinister level. Maybe they do care. This is exactly what they
do
want.
care. It's intentional. They absolutely
it's intentional.
They don't care about the kids. They care about an evil agenda.
Right,
this is evil.
It's absolutely deliberate. They care immensely because an educated populace will push back.
Yep.
And like we said earlier with the statistics, we're just getting lapped by other industrialized nations. I mean, do you think Singapore has these kind of? They probably have one kid in the whole country who's not at reading level, and everyone's yelling at him. Get to studying. I mean, these other countries, Asia,
China,
largely Asia, just lapping us when we're over here, and we have schools that can't teach one student proficiently.
My wife used to teach online to kids in China.
Yep.
And as you were reading, if you misspoke, She said a hand would come out from the screen. Bop!
You're kidding.
No, I'm not kidding. They took education serious.
The Chinese take education
And
seriously.
if you said weather, I meant why, pop,
Bop.
you see a hand coming to the screen, boop, and hit. Nope, get it right. Parents were sitting there. Oh my, this is terrible.
All right, so our next video is more from one of the teachers we saw earlier about what's contributing to all this.
Mm-hmm.
They can't do it. And it's not just that the kids don't have the knowledge, they don't care to have the knowledge. It would be different if kids were struggling or like didn't or had gaps and wanted to know more and wanted to try and wanted to get better. That's something that we all could work with. That's not the case here. And I don't blame them. I don't think it's their fault. And I don't necessarily think it's technology's fault either. Like the highest grade in my class right now is an 84. And I have, because that's what you got. And I promise you, these kids are reading in class. We do reading because we know the only way to get better at reading and comprehension is to read. But we have to read much smaller passages with much less complication to make sure that they get the foundation of comprehending. The problem is that's not a 7th grade skill. That's 4th grade skill. You should learn that back then. So a lot of teachers who are struggling is because we have to balance between the gaps that you have before, like the building blocks that you don't have, and also making sure that you get the information you should have got this year as well, which is why kids are constantly behind, because teachers are trying to fill in gaps. You know, they have their phones. It fixes things for them. None of their friends, they don't feel the gaps. You know, everybody around them is in the same spot, so they don't understand how behind they are. A lot of the times we're struggling to get kids to have the motivation to finish assignments, to care that they're failing. I have kids who are failing now and who are like, I don't care. I'm like, you know, you have a 40 in my class right now and I need you to turn this assignment. And they're like, I don't care about that 40. They don't care. And it's like leading a horse to water, but I can't make it drink.
Why don't these kids care?
When you call someone a dummy, when I was growing up, this is the 70s, when you call somebody a dummy on the playground, you had to fight. That was an insult that you had to fight. That was a grave insult. You dummy, what you get on your test? You had to fight. People start fighting. Now, they don't care.
They don't care. Where is that coming from?
Parents.
Maybe? Yeah, I was about to say the parents' fault, too.
If the parents are not modeling, you know, caring about education.
It's the parents.
Yeah.
My dad told me when I graduated from high school, I said, what if I don't want to go to college? He said, you got 2 choices. Either you go to college or you go to the graveyard. You choose. Which one you want to go to? That wasn't an option. That wasn't an option.
What were you going to do at the graveyard? Dig graves, or he was going to...
No, he's going to kill me.
He was going to end your life?
Be there for a while. Residency.
Okay.
I think
clarify.
I think another thing that needs to be thought about is, kids don't care, and you can blame technology, brains fried on TikTok. But also, it's time to revisit the idea of how we're doing modern education. The fact that a child who's 9 has to sit at a desk for 8 hours and be bombarded with information when they, you know, any human really can only learn for 3 hours a day. And the fact that they're still working on a system from the industrial age with bells. The way we're teaching our kids is so archaic and so, especially for young boys, and now we're medicating them.
Right.
Oh, you can't sit still for it. No one can.
Yeah.
But you expect a rowdy 10-year-old to sit there and learn about math for 8 hours a day, history, and then when he can't do it because it goes against his nature, then you're putting him on all these different pills and prescriptions. It's all a part of this.
Yeah, there's a lot involved with this.
Yeah.
There was one comment under that video from a parent. She said, reading and discussing what's been read has always been the answer. That hasn't changed. Parents not reading to their children has changed. Children not reading as many books in school has changed. Children not discussing those books.
That's probably the dumbing down of parents too.
Because it's way easier to give the kid an iPad to keep them quiet, right, than to say it's reading time.
Yeah, that would require parenting.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot.
This is intentional.
Yeah.
Without question.
It's evil.
So what else is contributing to this? So we alluded to it earlier, the school boards, which have been taken over by the unions, the teacher unions, of course.
Yep.
Why would unions want students to be performing poorly?
Well, unions they don't. Here's a great quote. I don't know if you ever heard this quote. It says, "When school children start paying union dues, that's when I'll start representing the interests of school children."
Yep.
It's a very famous quote. You ever heard it?
I saw it.
Yeah.
I saw it the day it happened.
What do you mean you saw it?
That was the one I saw was it was a news clip in which she was the head of the teachers union.
Yeah.
And they said, when will you start caring for the way I remember was when will you start caring for the students? And she said when they start paying union dues.
Yep. Yeah, so I think a lot of union presidents have copied this phrase. Yep.
When they start paying union dues.
Yeah. It was attributed to this gentleman named Albert Shanker, who was the president of the United Federation of Teachers and then the American Federation of Teachers from 74 to 97. But yeah, I think that's the attitude of all union presidents. And these they pay the union dues, but the vast majority of it goes to political work. It doesn't go to representing the teachers.
And I think the answer is, why would unions want them to do poorly? It's not that they want the union. If the unions take over the school boards, there's no accountability.
Right, exactly.
That's
There's
the
a
point.
huge lack of accountability.
There's no accountability. So no matter what I do, good, bad, indifferent, show up late, show up
Fox
whatever,
watching
whatever.
the hen house.
Yeah.
Yep.
I do whatever I want. And then, not only that, just get pay raises.
Right.
That's why.
Yep.
No accountability.
So more from that American Thinker article. It says, as witnessed through the 2021 school year, teacher unions led the charge in our government-funded K-12 system to make things worse. Putting partisan politics and self-promotion ahead of student learning, they refused to allow teachers to return to their classrooms until outlandish demands were met, including moratoriums on charter schools. We wouldn't want any competition.
No competition. No.
Defunding the police and Medicare for all. What does that have to do with education? Furthermore, the school week was reduced from 5 days to 4 days, with instruction only provided a few hours a day remotely.
There you go. No accountability.
Yeah. When in-person school finally resumed after an entire calendar year, the low norm accepted by multiple governors was a mere 30% of pre-pandemic instruction hours. So, for example, 2.5 hour school days for 4 days a week. And then to pour salt in the wound, when in-person public schooling was reinstated in many urban areas, instead of focusing on academic instruction, school boards and administrators, they advanced agendas focusing on other things, which we certainly know. These include the sexualization of children with obscene sex ed, gender redefinition, twisting American history, critical race theory, and the list goes on. So yeah, the unions definitely are causing a large part of the problem.
They're not educating at all. They're controlling.
Yeah, and anyone who's spent any time at school board meetings when the school board has been overtaken by union supporters, you know that these people just do not care at all.
No, they don't care.
So moving on a little bit, I found this woman. Her name is Charlotte Iserby. She served as the senior policy advisor in the Office of Educational Research and Improvement in the U.S. Department of Education during the first term of President Ronald Reagan. So we're going back here a ways. Mm-hmm. She wrote a book in 1999 called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. So again, this is not a new problem. The book describes how the changes gradually brought into the American public education system work to eliminate the influences of a child's parents, mold the child into a member of the proletariat in preparation for a socialist collectivist world of the future. So here is a video with Charlotte.
My name is Charlotte Thompson Iserby, and I served as Senior Policy Advisor in the United States Department of Education under the Reagan administration, during which I had access to all of the most important documents for the restructuring of not only American education, but global education. And I'm also the author of The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, which gets into all of this, gives the background of what I saw not only in the Department of Education, but as a local school board member. I was trained to identify the resistors to the sex ed, drug ed, alcohol ed, suicide ed, death ed, those good, smart Americans who realize that anything that has education hanging off the end of it is probably not what they're looking for. I was trained to identify those good people and to go up against them, and actually to go and try to get them to join us through the group process system, make them feel important, get them on a committee. And that just blew my mind. I have to say, people often ask me, what is it that got you involved in education? Well, finding out what I saw at the local level certainly upset me. When I went and I saw that Americans were being trained to identify resistors, then I got pretty upset. And luckily, there was a big book that came with the in-service training called Innovations in Education, A Change Agent's Guide. And I was able to take that back home with me. Unbelievable examples of how to con the Christians and different people who are upset with what you're trying to do, how to bring them over to your side. Case studies, true case studies of educators who had put programs in that normally, in a normal American town, nobody would want them. How did they manage to get them in? How did they con the people? And the other thing was, not only was I trained to identify the resistors, I was trained to go to the important people, high profile, highly thought of people in the community, with the Rotary and Chamber of Commerce, Garden Club, you name it, the different groups in our towns. Go to them and convince them of the importance of these new programs like sex ed, drug ed, I just mentioned all of them, and get them on your side, because when you can get the leadership in a community to go along with it, then the newspaper comes in and says, a committee's been set up with the head of the Rotary and this and that, and they're all getting behind this task force to discuss whether we're going to have a new sex education program. And then when Mary Jones, who ordinarily would think, why would we want to have a sex education program when we don't have any problems with kids having sex or anything? So she might be, concerned. She might be one of the resistors. She reads that her best friend, who's the head of the Garden Club, is on this committee, and she thinks, oh, well, hey, Mary Appleton is on that committee. She's heading it up. It must be okay. So I was taught really how to con the community.
Conning the community.
There you go.
Yep. I'd say it's deliberate. More than deliberate.
Oh, it's so sad. I've always said, if you don't know who the first president of the United States was, you shouldn't vote.
Right.
Shouldn't be able to vote.
That video was 17 years ago.
Yep.
Wow.
That video. I mean, they have been doing this for decades.
Kids back then would look like Einstein today.
Yep.
Yeah. And I remember back when the kids were little and I started asking questions and I was a resistor. And
you're a resistor today, Vicki.
You were on a list.
I was on
we
the
love
list,
you, boy.
continued. And yeah, they did all of those things that she talked about. They would have meetings and invite me and other moms and try and get us to buy in and be their buddy, and it's like, wow. From the all these people are trained.
Department of Education, federal?
No, I mean local
Okay.
school district administrators. They're all trained to identify the resistors. Yeah, I remember the superintendent one time of District 15 years ago. He invited a number of us. We had a group called Citizens for Accountability, and he invited us and took us out, it was like, here, let's meet at Culver's and talk, and here, I'll buy you ice cream. And it was like, I don't want ice cream.
At least a nicer restaurant if you're going.
Yeah, I was about to say Culver's.
That's not how you get the resistors
Yeah,
to
that's
stop
how you-
resisting.
yeah.
You got to come on, at least a 3-star.
Well,
Texas
some of
de
us could
Brazil,
never
you
be
might
loved.
get. You might Texas de Brazil, you might get me, but
That's what I'm saying.
Culver's.
No. You're not going to get me with a concrete mixer.
So yeah, it's all very deliberate, these people. So here's our part 2 video with Charlotte, where she talks about what teachers are taught about the true purpose of education and the definition of what good teaching is.
Professor Benjamin Bloom is probably the most important behavioral psychologist ever to live. I mean, maybe not quite as much as Pavlov and Skinner, but he really implemented the system in education in the United States. And he was the author of the taxonomy of educational objectives. And I know that doesn't mean much to us. It means a lot to teachers. They know. All teachers have to go through that, Bloom's taxonomy. And just to give you an idea of how blatant they are, Benjamin Bloom said the purpose of education, and I often say this to parents, really, listen to this. You think the purpose of education is reading, writing, and arithmetic? The purpose of education is to change the thoughts, actions, and feelings of students. And then he goes on and he says, he defines good teaching, and this is even worse from the parental standpoint, as challenging the student's fixed beliefs. And then, in some of his works that I have, that are in my book, a lot of this stuff is in it.
When he says challenge, does he mean challenge or does he mean change? Change their fixed?
Yeah, through challenging. It's through challenging. You go up against them and you change them. And you asked a good question, because then he goes on in one part of the taxonomy that is in my book, he says that he can take a student from here to there, from a belief in God or his country or whatever, to being an atheist and not believing in his country in 1 hour.
So that's what it means to be a good teacher. Not focusing on what they need to be successful, but challenging and changing their beliefs that they were taught at home by their own parents.
You're programming them to be controlled.
Yep.
A part of the system.
Drinking the Kool-Aid.
You don't want them to have a level of intellect or awareness or a belief system that would allow them to have a structure to counter. You want them to submit, be quiet, follow the rules, watch the TV, do what the TV says, go vote, early vote now, and
or vote by mail.
a couple times, and then don't step out of line. They're creating employees, they're creating yes men, and that's why they want you dumb.
Yeah.
And we see the real life applications of these things blatantly today.
It is so blatant. So why are so many people in denial? That's what I don't get.
Because they've already been controlled. And to admit it that it's happening to their children would be to admit it that it happened to them. And it would require action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just people don't think critically. They just you can't think. Here you are, let's real world example. Israel is an occupying oppressor of Gaza. Google it. They pulled out in 2005. Gaza's been self-governing since 2005. At gunpoint, Israel pulled all their citizens out in 2005. They're not occupiers. It's a lie. You can Google it. It ain't hard. But a populace that is taught just to see, if you're dumb and you have no confidence in yourself, you will just simply parrot what they tell you.
Yep.
And that's exactly what's going on. And I'm not just talking about the teenagers. I'm talking about congresswomen.
After a year in D.C. interviewing Congress members, dozens, I can tell you, those people are not to be looked up to. Their information is from bumper stickers and Wikipedia.
Yeah. Man, you can see it.
Pathetic.
You can see it. It's terrible. Sad.
That's what the communists want. They want to control us.
Evil.
Yep.
When you reward the wrong things, bad things happen.
Yep.
Bad things.
Yep. And it's scriptural. My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. Ignorance controls you for the evil, for the bad.
Yeah. So, Yeah, this leads to, she talks about Bloom's taxonomy, which talked about teacher training, and so that kind of leads into our next section, where a friend of mine who worked, and I think she still works for a nearby school district, she shared some information, some emails, and some slides from recent some required training that she's gone through. One of the slides says, the title is "The Burden on Teachers." Society places a lot of burden on teachers because the teachers spend almost half of a child's day with them, and society feels the role of a teacher should be much like that of a parent. Do we think teachers should be?
No,
on the
I never
same
heard
level?
that before.
Never heard of that.
I never heard that before.
Yeah. And she shared so of course the school districts, they all have, directors for diversity, equity, and inclusion. This one he says, colleagues. Affinity groups are spaces created by the district to support colleagues with similar identities in order to foster stronger levels of community, acknowledge pain points, and activate increased levels of hope. These groups meet monthly. These spaces provide the support to engage in personal exploration and equity work with individuals of similar identities. AAPI, I don't know what that is. Black, Latina, LGBTQIA+.
Asian American Pacific Islander.
Thank you. And white colleagues.
It's important to know those terms.
Yes.
See, I was educated in diversity equity. I'm a public school graduate.
Part public.
Can't read, but I know AAPI.
These colleagues are invited to attend to navigate core identity with an increased level of specificity, comfort, and freedom. This man is making $150,000 plus additional benefits, another $30,000 or $40,000. I looked him up to spew this. This is what teachers are spending their time on.
So the teachers are being dumbed down also.
Mm-hmm.
They're not sending their best. The teachers are, yeah.
And there's implicit bias training, in the district. It says with the passing of this is what our legislature is focusing on. With the passing of House Bill, blah, 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 implicit bias training will start to change the atmosphere and attitudes in the classroom, beginning with the teacher. Diversity will be more understood and accepted, and our thought process will be more understood. I mean, it just goes on and on. Oh, and then they talk about getting into ethics and boundaries for school employees. Okay, that sounds good. Let's see what this slide says. While certain individuals are predators who seek employment in schools to surround themselves with potential victims, which we read, what we went over when Tom Hampson was on, it was 10% of students will be victims of abuse by a teacher at some point. Says other school staff, this kills me, the other school staff unexpectedly find themselves in a love or lust situation with a student. How do you unexpectedly find it sounds like they're making excuses for the teachers and staff. Says this is often the result of poor choices or a lack of training regarding the dangers of certain behaviors by the school employee. So they go on to talk about misconceptions.
Is this real?
Yeah, it's from a district next door.
Really?
The first misconception is that only a sexual deviant would sexually exploit a student. That's
correct.
A misconception?
Correct. No, that's correct. That is correct.
No, exactly. That is correct. But they're calling it a misconception.
What's the misconception again?
Look, they say, while it is true that such individuals exist, they are not the only educators who engage in boundary violations and sexually exploit students. Oh, okay.
What
Well,
does
let's
that
keep
mean?
going. The second misconception is that the majority of educators are immune to boundary violations. And it says, in fact, given the right combination of factors, regular teachers and other employees are at risk for engaging in sexual misconduct with a student.
Regular teachers.
Wait. It just sounds like they're making excuses for these people. And then
This is real, Vicki?
Yes, this is real.
No wonder they're too busy to teach math.
They're trying to make excuses for having sex with students.
Says the majority of the next slide, this William person argues that the majority of teachers involved in sexual misconduct with students are experiencing a life crisis. Aww. Like divorce, death of a family member, poor health, professional failure, financial difficulties. So that means, okay, so you're experiencing a terrible crisis. So that means you're going to go have sexual misconduct with a student.
None of those justify. Yeah,
and it's just the way it's all stated. It's like excuse upon
This is incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm really stressed out about paying my bills this month. Let me have sex with one of my students.
Right. That'll calm you down.
Oh my gosh.
So they're expanding the definition. It says we need to expand the definition of which teachers are at risk to sexual misconduct beyond sexual deviance. I'm sorry, if you have sexual relations with a student, maybe you weren't a sexual deviant yesterday, but you are today.
Yeah.
You are now. You crossed the line.
Like water is wet. That makes you a sexual deviant.
Yes, that is the definition. It says, and address the notion that every teacher can become at risk to sexual misconduct given a confluence of professional and personal life changes that have negative consequences, and that the training of teachers as advisors move beyond simply informing teachers of the legal liabilities, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, this is what this is just, I could do a whole other podcast. I have more slides on all this garbage that these teachers are required to do. Instead of looking at these numbers of the proficiency, and that should be job 1. But of course it's not.
And 2 and 3 and 4. That's your only job. Should be.
Yeah.
I have a suspicion that China and South Korea don't have PowerPoints on the vindication of teachers who engage in sexual acts with students.
And have an implicit bias training.
This is so sad.
Well, it's a good thing they're focusing on important things instead of math and reading.
Yep. All right, so here's our final video talking about some possible solutions to this nightmare.
Oh, boy.
We need a substantial change. We need massive change. And I don't think it's going to come from central planning. I don't think some committee is going to get together and say, here's the new Common Core, the new No Child Left Behind. This has to be decentralized. We have to unleash the entrepreneurship and ingenuity of millions of people, which is why we need so-called school choice or education freedom. Rather than protecting this monopoly, this system that is just old and inefficient, let's unlock those funds, as many states are with these ESA laws. Let's unlock those funds and empower parents to go find the best solutions, and let's have a marketplace of competitive, amazing, education services rather than just the one-size-fits-all system that we have today. Like when you have, ineffective teachers, dumbed down curriculum, uninspiring whatever, it's like, yeah, you're gonna have kids who are just bored by it and not learning it or whatever, and then those kids, like those teachers, are using the same thing and it's just getting worse, and they're not caring. Many of the teachers are quitting, they're getting fed up, they're gonna go start their own little micro school or move into another profession. It's just some of these issues just kind of build on themselves, and so I think that's why we're seeing the trajectory that we are, that it's just a decline. Again, it's not a massive thing, it's just this slow trickle of decline. But again, like in my mind, it's that definition of insanity. Those who repeat the same thing over and over again yet expect a different result are insane.
But here's one of the things. I think we have to shift gears and stop, and we have to accept that they're doing exactly what they want to do. This is not done by mistake.
No.
To say, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, they're getting exactly what they expect.
Right.
This is not a mistake.
Correct. And that's why parents need to wake the heck up.
Yeah.
And stop being in denial. Yeah. And stop thinking these nice teachers are your friends. when your kid is 2-3 grade levels behind where they should be.
And maybe having sex with their teacher.
But it's not their fault.
And
They're
being
going through a crisis.
sexualized.
Right. The bills are tough this
with obscene sex ed, and it's the priorities are all screwed up. We know that for a fact in our school districts.
School choice, like you said, it introduces in some sense the market economy to education, that the superior schools and educational systems will prevail because parents will choose to send their children to schools that are adequate, and the ones that aren't will go defunct, and that's how it should be. You shouldn't be forced into a failing system.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so parents need to, just wake up, get them out of the public schools one way or another.
But are we at a point to where this is the second generation of students?
That's the thing.
Who have failed. I mean, if they went through this failure and they can't think critically, then the parents are not going to be able to look at their students and help them out.
Exactly.
Because how can I say this? They're dumb also. I don't want to say that.
They're programmed.
You just did.
They're programmed. They're programmed.
They're programmed also.
They're programmed. Yeah.
They're programmed also.
Yep.
But it's never right. It's never. You can. No matter how far down the wrong road you've gone, you can always turn around. The light bulb can come on any day, and
I think there has to be a spiritual awakening.
Yes, we need to pray for these parents that there's an awakening.
But an ignorant populace is much easier.
That's the whole point.
To control. That's the point.
The TV tells them to put the mask on. They put the mask on.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to form words in the Google bar to see if there's science there. It's a controlled populace.
But if you've been dumbed down so much to the point where you have no confidence in your critical thinking skills, then you won't even do it. I mean, this is the think about the society at whole that accepts that we no longer can tell a difference between a man and a woman.
Right.
That we don't know what a woman is. I mean, think about this. How low in critical thinking skills do you have to be to entertain that?
Correct.
And it's sad.
And all these adults and boomers and older generations that aren't paying attention to this catastrophe and think that it's not their responsibility and refuse to remove their head from the sand. It's going to hit them when they're in retirement, and the working class, the people who are upholding the economy, are these students who can neither read nor write, and they're the ones who are going to suffer because their retirement funds are going to go kaput when we have a uneducated society, and the economy is going to suffer from that. And all these people who thought that they didn't have to care are going to realize that our country's in big trouble when the people who are running this nation in every business and every organization were not properly educated.
Yeah.
Or can you imagine the controlling 218 people in the U.S. Congress, 218 AOCs?
Oh, gee whiz. Now I'm going to have nightmares.
And worse, like the medical field, I mean, the people are almost completely useless now. Like, to be honest with you, some of the medical professionals I've encountered, they're not very smart, in my opinion. Just saying, the med school has been infiltrated by the communists as well.
Yeah. At every level.
Not good.
Well.
No. All right, that's all I had for tonight.
Thanks a lot.
This inspired me. I think it's time to learn how to read.
Oh my goodness, this is.
Chloe, you think you're going to homeschool your kids?
100%.
Well, all right, people.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Till next time.